Hello, incredible story lovers. Prepare to have your hearts captivated by a tale of art, destiny, and a love that transcends misunderstandings. This is a story about finding beauty in unexpected places and the enduring power of a connection. Before we dive into this breathtaking narrative, tell us in the comments what city you're tuning in from. And if you believe that art can heal wounds and connect souls, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful, heartfelt stories. Your support means the world. You can't even pronounce the wine correctly, the millionaire sneered amidst hushed chuckles. But the waitress, poised and elegant, responded in perfect French and then offered a toast. The room fell silent, and he, for the first time, was speechless. "Why did you paint his eyes exactly like mine?" The deep voice cut through the gallery air like a dagger. Clara felt time freeze around her. She didn't need to turn to know who was behind her. That voice had haunted her dreams for 5 years. Leo Sterling. The small alternative gallery buzzed with people, but suddenly all the noise seemed to vanish. Clara tightened her grip on the glass of cheap wine, searching for something to cling to as her world trembled. Across the room, her main artwork, a boy with dark hair and piercing amber eyes, seemed to observe both of them. "It's just a coincidence," she replied, finally turning to face him. Time had been kind to Leo. His face still had that aristocratic hardness, those defined cheekbones, and perfectly trimmed beard. He was dressed in black, as always, elegant even in his decline. Rumors of the fall of the Sterling Empire had reached even her ears. "Don't lie to me, Clara." His gaze locked onto her with intensity, sweeping over her as if searching for something he had lost. "I know you too well. You've never painted anything by chance." Clara tried to maintain her composure, but felt her body betraying her. Heat spread through her chest to her cheeks. It was ridiculous that, after so long, he could still provoke such a reaction in her. "5 years have passed, Leo. You don't know me at all." Around them, guests began to notice the tension. Some whispered, recognizing the famous art dealer fallen from grace. Clara took a step back, seeking space to breathe. Leo took a step towards her, shortening the distance she tried to create. "That child," his voice slightly broke. "How old is he?" "That's none of your business," Clara replied. But the firmness she tried to show dissolved into a trembling voice. Leo's eyes moistened slightly, something she had never seen in that proud man. His gaze returned to the painting, and then to her, connecting the dots she had tried to keep separate for years. "Is he mine?" The question came out like a broken sigh, barely audible in the bustle of the exhibition. Clara felt tears threaten to overflow. 5 years building a life away from him, protecting Matteo, creating a world where Leo Sterling was just a blurred memory. And now, in a single night, everything was about to crumble. Before she could answer, the gallery curator approached, oblivious to the tension between them. "Clara, there are some collectors interested in your main piece. Could you?" "In a moment," she replied automatically, without taking her eyes off Leo. When the woman moved away, Leo leaned towards her. The scent of his perfume, the one that had so often permeated her skin, hit her with a wave of memories. "Yes, that child is mine," she murmured, with a mixture of determination and vulnerability she had never seen in him. "I'm not going to let you run away again." Clara felt the ground move beneath her feet. The gallery, the people, even the lights seemed to spin around her. Everything she had carefully built now hung by a thread, and that thread was in the hands of the only man who had managed to break through her defenses. On the wall, the portrait of Matteo seemed to observe her with reproach, with eyes exactly like those of the man now waiting for an answer she was not prepared to give. "Mama, why did that man look at me as if he knew me?" Mateo's question floated in the air of the small studio as his cobalt-stained fingers traced figures on the paper. Clara put her paintbrush in the water jar and watched her son. Rebellious hair, stubborn chin, and those eyes, those cursed eyes that haunted her every morning. "Some people think they know everyone," she replied, dodging the truth as she had done for years. The encounter with Leo at the gallery had left an invisible mark on her skin. 3 days later, she still felt the weight of his gaze, the warmth of his breath, when he murmured that threat that sounded strangely like a promise. "Your hands are trembling, Mama," Mateo observed with that intuition only children possess. Clara clenched her fists, trying to contain the tremor. Her treacherous mind dragged her back 5 years. The studio smelled of turpentine and desire. Leo's fingers traced her bare back, stained with crimson, drawing symbols only he understood on her skin. The dim candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. "I've never met anyone like you," he whispered against her neck. Clara turned in his arms, facing the intensity of his gaze. There, sprawled on the floor, covered with unfinished canvases, they were just two bodies searching for each other in the darkness. There was no sterling surname, no galleries, no millions. Only them and the trail of paint their bodies left on the canvases. "Could you paint me like this forever?" he murmured, capturing her lips in a hungry kiss. Her hands, always steady when painting, trembled as they traced Leo's bare torso. There was something almost sacred in the way their bodies fit together, as if they had been designed by the same artist. The doorbell brought her abruptly back to the present. Luna, her only true friend from the academy, burst in like a whirlwind of colors and fragrances. "Mateo? Where's my favorite painter?" The boy ran off to explore her gift. The two women sat by the window overlooking the park. "I saw him at the exhibition, Clara," Luna said bluntly. "Did he talk to you?" Clara nodded, a knot forming in her throat. "He suspects Mateo. He told me he wouldn't let me run away again." Luna took her hands tightly. "Will you tell him the truth? That he disappeared when you needed him most?" The last exhibition, the sudden success, their joint plans, and then silence. Leo had disappeared without explanation, leaving her pregnant and heartbroken. "He doesn't know what he did," Clara murmured. "I never told him." "Because he never gave you the chance," Luna retorted harshly. The primary school buzzed with activity for the spring festival. Clara was helping to hang children's drawings when she felt him before she saw him. That weight in the air, that electricity that only Leo provoked. "He has talent," he said, contemplating a drawing signed by Mateo. "The strokes are confident, fearless. Like yours." Clara turned slowly. "What are you doing here?" "I investigated," he replied, with that frankness that always characterized him. It wasn't hard to find them. Several parents watched them curiously. Leo Sterling, even in his decline, was still a recognizable figure. "This is no place for this conversation," she whispered, trying to remain calm. "Every place you are is exactly where I need to be." The intensity of his gaze made her stomach clench. 5 years, and he still had that effect on her, that power to tear down her defenses with a simple phrase. Over the next few weeks, Leo appeared at every school event, every children's exhibition, every place where Mateo was. He never got too close to the child, but his eyes followed him with a mix of fascination and longing that tore Clara apart. The rehearsal for the school play brought them together in the auditorium. Clara, in charge of costumes, was handling fabrics when her foot caught on a cable. Before she could fall, strong arms caught her by the waist. "Always on the edge of the precipice," Leo murmured against her ear. The warmth of his hands penetrated the fabric of her dress. Their bodies recognized each other instantly, as if time had not passed. "Let me go," she asked without conviction. Leo loosened his grip, but didn't release her. His eyes, so similar to Mateo's, studied her with intensity. "You still feel," he whispered. "I see it." Clara tried to pull away, but her body betrayed her. The same magnetism, the same irresistible attraction. Leo slowly leaned in, his lips brushing Clara's cheek in a caress that was both a question and an affirmation. And she, against everything her mind screamed, did not pull away. "You know, as I tell you this story, I wonder where you're listening from, my dear. Are you curled up in bed with a hot cup of tea, or perhaps on public transport, stealing minutes from your day to immerse yourself in this story of Clara and Leo? I'd love to know. I truly read every comment you leave, every message, and I always try to reply. It's you who brings these stories to life, who makes these words meaningful. So don't hesitate to tell me what you think so far, what you think will happen between these two. And if you're enjoying Clara and Leo's story, your like means much more than you imagine. It not only helps more people like you find these stories, but it tells me I'm on the right track. Now, let's get back to Clara and Leo. A chapter full of revelations awaits us. The coffee arrived cold in her hands. Clara barely noticed as she scanned the financial newspaper she would normally ignore. The headline confirmed what rumors had whispered. Sterling Empire on the verge of collapse. Investors demand proof of legitimate heir. Eleanor Hayes, the city's most influential gallerist, was quoted directly. Shareholders need stability. Without a proven heir, the board of directors will take full control of the Sterling collections. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Now she understood Leo's sudden appearance, his insistence, his poorly disguised desperation. It wasn't about her or buried feelings. It was about saving what was left of his empire. The doorbell rang past midnight. Luna had taken Mateo to sleep, insisting that Clara needed rest. But opening the door, she knew rest would remain a distant illusion. "I need to talk to you," Leo said, entering without waiting for an invitation. His presence filled the small apartment. His suit was rumpled, and he had a shadow of stubble she had never seen on him during their relationship. "About how you want to use my son to save your fortune?" Clara attacked, throwing the newspaper onto the table. Leo stopped dead, his expression hardening. "Is that why you think I'm here? Why else would you so desperately seek a son whose existence you never cared about?" He took a step towards her, contained rage vibrating in his every movement. "How could I care about what I didn't know existed?" "Don't lie," Clara's voice broke. "I looked for you for weeks. I left messages at your office, at the art house galleries." "I never received anything," Leo replied, confusion momentarily clouding his anger. "You disappeared without explanation. When I returned from Milan, you were gone." Clara laughed bitterly. "And now I'm supposed to believe it was all a cosmic misunderstanding, just when you desperately need an heir?" The tension between them was palpable, a rope about to snap. "I need a DNA test," he finally said. "You're not going to use my son as a lifeboat for your fortune." Leo slammed his open palm against the wall, making the hanging pictures tremble. "Also, he's my son," he burst out with a vulnerability Clara had never seen in him. 5 years, Clara. 5 years you stole from me." He approached her with determined steps. Clara backed away until she hit the bookshelf filled with brushes and paint jars. "Don't talk to me about theft when you're the one who disappeared," she retorted, meeting his gaze. Leo eliminated the distance between them in an instant. His eyes reflected a storm of emotions, rage, pain, longing, that paralyzed Clara. When his hands cupped her face, she couldn't react. Their lips collided with the force of 5 years of absence. A furious, desperate kiss, laden with recriminations and unanswered questions. Clara's hands, treacherous, clung to his shirt as she responded with the same intensity, as if she could punish him through contact. It was an eternal instant, a flash of sensations that illuminated 5 years of darkness. When they finally separated, gasping, Clara pushed him away. "You can't just walk into my life like this and expect me to surrender to the touch that broke me," she said, wiping her lips with the back of her hand, as if she could erase the mark he had left. "I never wanted to break you," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "And now I discover we have a son." Clara hugged herself, trying to contain the tremor that ran through her body. "Matteo is not a pawn in your business game. It's not about the money," Leo insisted. "It's about the truth, about lost time I can never get back." When he finally left, Clara slid to the floor, exhausted. The apartment seemed emptier than ever, as if Leo had taken something essential with him. The following days brought a strange calm. Leo didn't appear. He didn't try to contact her at school. Clara began to believe he had finally understood her rejection until she found the first note. It was in her mailbox, a simple piece of paper with a handwritten phrase, "Light always finds cracks in the deepest darkness." These were words from her first exposed painting, the one Leo had anonymously bought. Then more came each day, in impossible places. Under the apartment door, between the pages of a magazine in the doctor's waiting room, even inside her bag. All phrases from works she had painted years ago, when her art began to flourish under Leo's watchful eye. There is no brush capable of erasing what has already been painted. The most vibrant colors are born from the darkest pain. Love is the only stroke that never completely dries. Clara kept every note, unable to discard them, unknowingly building a mosaic of memories she thought were forgotten. On Sunday, while checking her email, she found the proposal any aspiring artist would dream of. An invitation to exhibit at the prestigious Altamira Gallery, the epicenter of contemporary art in the city. The signature at the bottom of the letter made her stomach clench. Eleanor Hayes, the same woman who was pressuring Leo for a legitimate heir. "Mama?" Matteo's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Yes, darling." The boy rubbed his eyes, half asleep. "I dreamed about the man with hair like mine," he said with that disconcerting simplicity of childhood. "He told me he was my daddy. Is it true?" Clara froze, feeling the world stop around her. The notes, the proposal, and now this. It was as if Leo had found a way to infiltrate every corner of her life, even her son's dreams. "Why do you think you dreamed it?" she asked with a trembling voice. Matteo shrugged with that brutal honesty of childhood. "Because his eyes are like mine when I look in the mirror." The old industrial loft retained the essence of the Leo Clara had known. Large windows that captured the afternoon light, shelves full of art books, and that unmistakable scent of turpentine mixed with old wood. However, something had changed. The space that once overflowed with life now seemed like a museum of memories. "I haven't moved anything since you left," Leo confessed as he poured 2 glasses of wine. "I suppose part of me hoped you'd come back." Clara ran her fingers along the edge of an abandoned easel. On it, a half-finished canvas, her sleeping face captured in soft charcoal strokes. "Why did you invite me here?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. "Neutrality," he replied. "In your apartment, I'm an intruder. In my offices, you'd be on the defensive. Here we were, equals once." They didn't mention Matteo immediately, as if both needed to first rebuild the bridge between them before crossing it. "There are ingredients in the fridge," Leo said, taking off his jacket. "I thought we could cook." An involuntary smile formed on Clara's lips. "Do you even remember how to?" Leo responded with that half-smile she had drawn so many times from memory. I remember you taught me how to cut onions without crying. It felt strangely natural, as if the years of separation had compressed into a parenthesis. Leo chopped vegetables while Clara prepared the pasta, moving in a synchronized dance around the kitchen. Their hands brushed as they reached for utensils, causing that familiar tingling sensation they both pretended to ignore. "Matteo hates olives," she commented casually as she tasted the sauce. Leo's hand stopped mid-air. "What else should I know about him?" he asked with a vulnerability that disarmed Clara. "He loves to draw with his fingers, even though he has 1,000 paintbrushes at his disposal. He talks in his sleep. He has your temper when something doesn't go his way." And she hesitated for an instant. "He's been asking about his father since he turned 3. Leo put down the knife and turned to the window, hiding his face. "What have you told him?" "That his father loved us, but had to go far away." The silence that followed was charged with unasked questions, with pending explanations. Dinner passed with anecdotes about Matteo, and carefully selected memories of their shared past, avoiding the main wound. When the dishes were clean, and the second bottle of wine half finished, Leo pointed to the corner where his studio used to be. "I left some blank canvases," he said softly, "in case you wanted to." Clara approached the space, where everything remained exactly as she remembered it. The brushes organized by size, the oil paints sorted by shade, even the old stained apron he used to wear. "You kept it?" she asked, touching the worn fabric. "I kept everything," he replied from behind her. "Even hope." Something inside Clara broke at those words. She put on the apron in an automatic gesture and selected a thin paintbrush. Without thinking, she began to trace lines on a blank canvas. Leo sat silently watching her, exactly as he used to, when they spent entire nights with her painting, and him contemplating her as if the true art was the movement of her hands. The paint flowed effortlessly, the silhouette of a man and a child with their backs to them, looking towards an uncertain horizon. Clara was so engrossed that she didn't notice Leo approaching until she felt him right behind her. "You were always able to say with colors what words couldn't," he murmured, so close that his breath brushed her neck. Clara turned slowly. Leo raised his hand and gently wiped a blue paint smudge from her cheek. His fingers lingered longer than necessary, tracing the contour of her face as if trying to memorize it again. "I can't understand how I could have lost you," he whispered, sliding his hand to Clara's nape, tangling his fingers in her hair. Time seemed to stop. His eyes, so similar to Matteo's, held a silent plea that brought down Clara's last defenses. When their lips met, it wasn't with the desperate fury of days ago, but with the tenderness of someone rediscovering something precious they thought was lost forever. Leo pulled her closer, deepening the kiss as his hands explored the curve of her back. With a softness that contrasted with the intensity of their feelings, he guided her to the studio wall, where their bodies met completely. The familiar warmth spread over every inch of her skin, awakening sensations she had kept dormant for years. Clara let out a sigh as Leo's lips left her mouth to trace the line of her jaw, slowly descending to her neck. Her hands instinctively sought the buttons of his shirt, unbuttoning them one by one until his torso was revealed. The scar that crossed his right side, the result of a youthful accident, was still there, reminding her that this was not a dream. Her fingers traced the contour of the scar as Leo lifted her slightly, allowing her to wrap her legs around his waist. For an instant, they were again those lovers who created art with their bodies, who transformed desire into invisible strokes of pleasure. But when Leo began to slide the strap of her dress, something clicked in Clara's mind. The image of Matteo appeared sharply, along with all the unanswered questions, all the unhealed wounds. "Wait," she whispered, placing her hands on his chest. I can't if it's just desire." Leo pressed his forehead against hers, breathing raggedly. "It's not just desire, Clara," he replied, his voice breaking. "It's saudade for the only real thing I had in my life." The use of that Portuguese word she had taught him years ago, that melancholy for something one had and lost, broke something inside Clara. The tears she had held back for so many years finally found their release. "I'm scared," she confessed, "scared to trust again, for Matteo to suffer, for all this to be about your empire and not about us." Leo hugged her tightly, as if afraid she might vanish in his arms. "The empire can sink tomorrow," he murmured against her hair. "I only need you, you both." They remained like that, embracing, until the tension transformed into a different intimacy. They didn't make love that night, but when Leo invited her to stay, Clara found no strength to refuse. They lay down in the spacious bed they once shared, looking at each other in the dim light, like two survivors of a shipwreck who finally found land. Leo took her hand in his and held it all night, like an anchor preventing her from drifting away again. Clara watched his sleeping face, softened by sleep, and for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where wounds could heal. Dawn found her still awake, watching their intertwined hands, when her phone vibrated with a notification. The message from the Altamira gallery was brief and blunt. "Exhibition canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. We apologize for any inconvenience." Seconds later, another message arrived, this time from Eleanor Hayes. "Leo Sterling is being investigated for art market manipulation. Your name has been mentioned. Be careful." Eleanor Hayes's office seemed designed to intimidate. Minimalist, cold, with a single work of art hanging behind her desk, an authentic Rothko whose value surpassed the vital budget of most artists who begged for her attention. "The cancellation wasn't my idea," Eleanor said, crossing her long legs clad in black silk. "I received direct orders from the board." Clara pressed her purse against her lap, trying to maintain her composure. "And the accusation against Leo? Art market manipulation?" Eleanor offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Someone suggested that Leo was artificially inflating your value to distract investors from the Sterling crisis." She paused meaningfully. That someone was Julian. Julian? The name fell like a stone in Clara's stomach. Leo's younger brother. I suppose he didn't mention him. The room seemed to spin around Clara. Julian Sterling, the name she had heard whispered during the brief months she frequented the galleries on Leo's arm. The absent brother, the rebellious heir. Why would he do something like that? Eleanor stood up with feline movements to pour 2 glasses of mineral water. The Sterling brothers have a complicated relationship, and Julian has always been ruthless when it comes to protecting the family legacy. Leaving the meeting, Clara walked like an automaton through the streets when her phone rang. Luna's voice came through, choppy, muffled by background noise. "Accident at school. Matteo. Hospital." The world stopped. Clara ran, letting panic propel her through traffic, ignoring traffic lights and furious horns. When she reached the emergency entrance, she saw Leo already there, pale and disheveled, arguing heatedly with a nurse. "I'm his father, damn it!" he shouted in a voice Clara had never heard from him, broken by fear. "Clara!" Luna exclaimed, seeing her run towards her. A scaffolding from the school stage collapsed. Matteo was nearby, but he's fine. Just some scratches and a fright. Clara barely registered her words. Her gaze was fixed on Leo, on the pure desperation emanating from every pore of his body. The doors to the treatment room opened. Matteo appeared sitting on a gurney, with a decorative plaster on his forehead and holding a stuffed animal that some compassionate nurse must have given him. Seeing his mother, he smiled, but it was his reaction when he saw Leo that changed everything. "The man from my dreams," he exclaimed, with that brutal innocence of children. Something primal activated in Leo. Before Clara could react, he had already crossed the distance to the gurney. With a gentleness that contrasted with his previous desperation, he took Matteo in his arms and hugged him tightly to his chest, as if fearing he might vanish. "You're okay, you're okay," he repeated in a broken whisper. Clara watched, paralyzed, as thick tears rolled down Leo's cheeks as he held his son for the first time. Tears from a man who had never cried, not even when he lost his father, not even when the empire began to falter. Matteo, confused but not scared, curiously touched Leo's wet cheeks. "Why are you crying? It doesn't hurt, I promise." Leo let out a choked laugh. "Sometimes adults cry when they're very, very happy," he replied, looking at Clara over the boy's head with such intensity that she felt an electric current run through her. 2 hours later, with Matteo sleeping peacefully in his room, Clara and Leo faced each other in the small apartment kitchen. "This morning I received a call," Leo said, with a calmness that barely contained the internal storm. "Julian returned to the city 6 days ago, exactly 1 day after I saw you at the gallery." Clara sank into a chair. "Eleanor mentioned he was the one who accused you of manipulation." "That's not the worst of it," Leo interrupted, placing his hands on the table. 5 years ago, when I traveled to Milan, I left Julian in charge of communications. All the calls, the messages. The realization hit Clara like a slap. "He intercepted my messages," she murmured, the pieces finally fitting into place. "You never knew I was pregnant because he never told you." Leo nodded, his jaw clenched with suppressed rage. "There's more. My mother knew about Matteo. Julian told her, but he made her promise to keep it a secret to protect me from the scandal." "Your mother knew?" The betrayal spread like poison through Clara's veins. "She's sick now, advanced Alzheimer's." Leo's voice broke. "Perhaps that's why she confessed. She no longer distinguishes what secrets to keep." The silence that followed was heavy, like lead laden with years of lost moments that could never be recovered. "I'm going to confront Julian tomorrow," Leo announced with an iron determination. "And after that, if you want, I'll disappear from your lives." Clara looked at him, truly looked at him, as she hadn't in 5 years. She saw the broken but dignified man, the father who had cried while holding his son, the lover who had kept her paint-stained smock as if it were a treasure. "What will happen to your empire?" she asked, though the answer no longer mattered to her. Leo slowly approached, until he was centimeters away from her. "If I lose everything, but I have you, you all, I will have won." It wasn't a passionate kiss like the previous ones. It was an almost shy brush of lips, a silent question, a whispered promise. Clara responded by moving closer, letting her arms find their way around his neck naturally, as if her body remembered exactly where it belonged. They moved in silence to the sofa, where they lay side by side, simply looking at each other in the dim light. They didn't need words or grand promises. Their intertwined hands, synchronized breaths, and unwavering gazes spoke a language older than any tongue. "I want to be there when Matteo wakes up," Leo murmured. "You'll have to answer a lot of questions," Clara warned. "He's terribly curious." A smile illuminated Leo's face. "He's like his mother." The first rays of dawn found them still awake, building in whispers the foundations of something they had thought impossible just hours before. When Matteo appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes with his tiny fists, he stopped when he saw Leo. "Did you stay for breakfast?" he asked with that direct simplicity of childhood. Leo looked at Clara for permission before answering. She nodded slightly. I stayed because we have a lot to talk about, Leo replied, bending down to the boy's height. Important things about you, about your mom, and about me. Clara watched as her son and his father looked at each other for the first time with full awareness of who they were to each other. Two pairs of identical eyes, two souls recognizing each other without the need for words. 3 weeks later, the mail brought an elegant envelope addressed to Clara. She opened it while Matteo played in the park under Leo's watchful eye, who had kept his promise to be present every day since that morning. It was an invitation from a new independent gallery, small but respected. The curator specifically requested a piece titled The Father Born Late, the piece Clara had been secretly painting for the past few weeks. At the end of the letter, a handwritten note. We hope you will sign with your full name on the work. Your choice, of course. Clara watched Leo lift Matteo into the air, spinning him around as both laughed freely. She picked up a pen, and on the reply form, she wrote clearly and decisively, Clara Dawson Sterling, the walls of New Strokes, the small gallery, vibrated with the energy of the crowd. It wasn't the kind of opening that attracted prestigious critics or millionaire collectors, but every face present reflected a genuine admiration for what they saw. Clara watched from a corner, a glass of cheap champagne in hand, as attendees paused in front of the series titled Portraits of a Time Recovered. 6 paintings that told a story without words, a man teaching a child to mix colors, the same man asleep on a sofa with a storybook on his chest, 2 silhouettes, large and small, outlined against a beach sunset. But it was the central piece, The Father Born Late, that captivated all eyes. A man kneeling in front of a child, both with identical amber eyes, their hands joined on a blank canvas, as if they were about to create something together. The signature in the bottom right corner, clear and decisive. Clara Dawson Sterling. It's the most honest thing you've ever painted. Leo's voice brushed her ear as his arms wrapped around her waist from behind, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the past 2 months. It's the most honest thing I've ever lived, she replied, leaning slightly against his chest. Matteo darted among the guests, enthusiastically explaining technical details about the paintings he had learned, observing his mother. His vocabulary, surprisingly sophisticated for a 5-year-old, drew smiles and murmurs of admiration. Have you talked to your lawyer? Clara asked, turning to face Leo. He nodded, a shadow of weariness briefly crossing his face. The papers are ready. Joint custody. Exactly as we discussed. Clara gently caressed his cheek, where a nascent beard was beginning to appear. Leo had changed in these months. Perfectly knotted ties had given way to more relaxed shirts, and the burden of maintaining appearances seemed to have dissipated from his shoulders. And the Sterling building? She asked, referring to the last bastion of the Sterling Empire that had not yet been sold. Leo took her hand and kissed it softly. On Monday, I'm signing the sale. I've already spoken with the art school investors. The space will be perfect for them. It was no secret to anyone present that Leo Sterling, the former art magnate, had decided to sell practically everything to start anew. The scandal with Julian had shaken the foundations of the family empire, revealing decades of manipulations and secrets that Leo had preferred to leave behind. And Julian? The question Clara had been avoiding for weeks finally escaped her lips. In Switzerland, I believe, with enough money to live comfortably, but out of my life. Out of our lives. The determination in his voice left no room for doubt. Forgiveness might come someday, but the trust between brothers was irrevocably broken. The gallery curator approached with a young couple interested in acquiring, seconds before the kiss, an intimate piece that showed two faces about to meet, with an almost palpable tension between them. I explained to them that this work is not for sale, the curator said with an apologetic smile. It's part of our private collection, Leo confirmed, intertwining his fingers with Clara's. There are moments one prefers to keep at home. When the last guest left, and Matteo finally succumbed to exhaustion, curled up on a small sofa in the gallery office, Clara and Leo slowly began to dismantle the exhibition. They hadn't hired assistants. This moment belonged entirely to them. I have a surprise for you, Leo said, carefully wrapping a small watercolor. Well, for both of you, actually. From his pocket, he pulled out a set of old keys with a small bronze keychain depicting a paintbrush. What's this? Clara asked, taking them curiously. The beach house, the only property I decided to keep. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. I thought we could go this weekend, all three of us. There's a blank mural waiting for us. The idea of painting with Leo, with Matteo, participating in a family project, brought a lump to Clara's throat. For years she had dreamed of moments like these, even while convincing herself they would never be possible. Matteo has never painted a mural, she said, already imagining her son's small hands stained with colors. Neither have I, Leo confessed. It will be our first six-handed work. The gallery fell silent as Leo lifted a sleeping Matteo into his arms. Clara closed the door behind them, looking one last time at the space that had marked the formal beginning of their new life. In the apartment, after putting Matteo to bed, Leo and Clara found themselves alone in the small studio she had made her sanctuary for years. The dim lights cast dancing shadows on the canvases stacked against the walls. I found this the other day, Leo said, pulling a small sketch from his pocket. You drew it the first night we spent together. Clara recognized the drawing. Two intertwined hands quickly traced on a paper napkin. A moment captured on the fly, unpretentious. Pure emotion transformed into lines. I thought you'd lost it, she murmured, taking the fragile paper in her fingers. Leo slowly approached, with that controlled intensity that had always been his hallmark. I never lost anything truly important, he replied, shortening the distance between them. It just took me time to realize it. Clara placed the sketch on the table and looked up at him. With quiet resolve, she rose on tiptoe and gently kissed his lips. A kiss that tasted of fulfilled promises and a shared future. Leo responded, deepening the contact, his hands finding their way to her waist. With equal familiarity and reverence, he lifted her effortlessly, drawing a soft laugh from her that echoed in the silence of the studio. You are my favorite canvas now, he whispered against her neck. It wasn't like that first time, years ago, with the urgency of youth and the uncertainty of tomorrow. This time, each caress was a recognition, each sigh an affirmation. They made love slowly, rediscovering contours that had changed with time, but that remained home for both of them. Their bodies found that rhythm they had never truly forgotten, that perfect dance they had interrupted, but never concluded. When their breaths finally calmed and silence enveloped them once more, they remained intertwined like the two hands in that first sketch. Do you think one chooses who the love of their life will be? Clara asked, tracing with her fingers the scar on Leo's side. He took a moment before responding, his fingers idly playing with a strand of Clara's hair. I believe true love isn't chosen. It's recognized. His voice was barely a murmur in the dim light, like the artist who instinctively knows what color he needs, even before he sees it. The morning found them preparing for the trip to the beach house. Matteo, enthusiastic about the idea of creating a family mural, had already drawn several sketches of what he wanted to paint. Leo studied them with the same seriousness with which he had once evaluated works by consecrated masters. "He has your vision and my technique," he commented, genuinely impressed by his son's innate talent. A formidable combination. Clara watched the scene from the kitchen, this new reality that seemed both a miracle and the most natural thing in the world. The path to here had been full of pain, misunderstandings, and lost time. But every obstacle, every tear, had led them precisely to this moment. "What are you thinking about?" Leo asked, hugging her from behind as she finished preparing coffee. Clara turned in his arms, losing herself for a moment in those amber eyes she now saw duplicated in her son's face. "That life imitates art sometimes," she replied. "Layers and layers that seem like mistakes until they finally reveal the complete picture." Leo smiled, that smile that made tiny wrinkles appear at the corners of his eyes, the smile she had captured in dozens of sketches kept over the years. "And that sometimes," he added, leaning in to kiss her gently, "the canvas we thought was ruined turns out to be our masterpiece." Matteo burst into the kitchen, brandishing a new drawing where 3 figures, 2 large and 1 small, held paintbrushes in front of a huge canvas. "I know what we're going to paint," he exclaimed enthusiastically. "Us painting together." When Clara and Leo exchanged a knowing glance, recognizing the perfect recursiveness of the idea, the infinite potential of that us that was just beginning to unfold. As they packed suitcases and loaded the car with canvases, brushes, and paint cans, Clara thought about all the paintings she had created throughout her life. Some had hung in prestigious galleries, others remained hidden in folders no one else had seen. But none compared to the one they were creating now. Not with oils or acrylics, but with daily decisions, with complicit glances, with hands meeting in the dark. The final, definitive layer was precisely this, the shared life they finally dared to paint together. "Art imitates life," she murmured to herself, as she watched Leo and Matteo animatedly discuss which colors to bring. But love is the only stroke that never fades.